Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for another Select webinar. This is a first in a new series called Automate for Success. And in this episode, we're going to take action on customer feedback. Today, we're going to be joined by Nick Ellis on that side, I think. No, that way. Tess, on the other side of me.
Hello.
Say hello, Nick. So what?
I'll unmute myself and then say hello. Hello.
That's the way to do it. So anyway, as we said, it's all automate for success. Take action on customer feedback. What do we mean by take action on customer feedback, Nick? What do we mean?
So I spend a lot of time with customers talking about obviously their processes and how we can automate, how we can improve them. One of the big areas that comes up is understanding customer feedback and also tracking it and actually being able to do something about it, which may sound intuitive, but it often involves lots and lots of emails and spreadsheets and what have you. So what I really mean is how do you get customer feedback? How do you determine what your customer feedback, what do you want from your customer feedback? That's the first thing. Don't get customer feedback just for the sake of it if you're not going to do anything about it, because I've gone all pixelated. Don't get customer feedback just for the sake of it because you feel like you should. There needs to be a reason for that. What do you actually want out of your customer feedback? And what are you going to do about it once you've got your customer feedback? Because if you're just going to collect it and feel good about yourself, that's probably not a good enough reason to be running these campaigns. So what's the motivation behind it? Once you've established that, then you get into the how are you going to gather it? And there are tools, obviously Microsoft Forms is what we're going to be looking at today. So there are tools for gathering that in a fairly easy, simple way. I can remember over a decade ago now, being tasked with gathering monthly customer feedback from our customers, and it meant going around with my laptop to each of the customers and filling in all the fields on a spreadsheet, and it was torturous. Fortunately, the world has. It was horrible, and across the company, I think they had about 500 or 600 customers. So every month, so we did a time and motion study, and we worked out that essentially there were 3 employees. In effect, there were 3 employees full time doing nothing but filling in this one spreadsheet. So time has moved on a great deal from that, and obviously, one of my big goals, possibly from having been burned by that, is to make it as light touch both for you and for your customers as possible. If you make a big administrative process for your customers in providing the feedback, they're probably not going to do so. If you make it a big administrative process internally to do something about the feedback, it's going to be really tempting to go, oh, put that in this drawer down here and never think about it again. So that's kind of the case. So that when things come in and somebody comes along and says, I think that's great. One of the things I often say to customers, and it's an interesting thing, that people don't seem to quite know what to do with the good feedback. They might put it out on their social media. That's a common thing. Oh, they said we were great. I'm going to put it on my LinkedIn feed. And that's very valid. I'm not detracting from that, especially not with 2 marketing professionals on the call with me today. It's a very valid use of that. But also, I think where that can be used more, or additionally, should I say, where that can be used in addition to that is actually in terms of focusing on what you're good at, giving you the info, because sometimes it's a surprise. Sometimes you may find that you feel that you're not, that isn't one of your core strengths as a business, but your customer feedback say, actually, that's the thing we really love. I remember years and years ago, we're talking back in the 90s now, there was a really interesting thing where Burger King found out that most customers switched from, this certainly in the UK, most customers that switched from McDonald's to Burger King did so not because of the burgers, but because of the fries. which they had always sort of treated as a secondary thing. And then they kind of, you may remember, there was a big thing about King fries and what have you. They did a big marketing. They didn't change the product. They just realised that it was what they thought of as a secondary add-on was actually one of the core attractions for their business. So that's a good example of, don't sort of go, oh, lovely, we feel good about ourselves with the positive. Use it and learn from it. And I'll just very quickly, whenever I have arrived in a new job, and I did it here as well, why did you recruit me? People never ask that question. They often ask, why did I not get the job on jobs that they don't get? People very rarely ask the question, why did you recruit me? Positive feedback is good. Because, oh, okay, right, that's the stuff that you liked. So I can either say, well, therefore that's great and I don't need to think about it, or I can say I need to focus and build on those areas, but at least you can do something with it. So yeah, or alternatively, you may get feedback that you're less delighted by. You're less inclined to have your marketing colleagues put on the LinkedIn page. And then what are you going to do about that? Again, it can be quite tempting to go, oh, I don't really want to think about that, or to dismiss the customer as somebody, oh, they're always awkward, or whatever it might be. Don't dismiss it. Negative feedback is a gift. Somebody once said to me a long time ago, all feedback is a gift. Somebody is giving up their time to tell you something that is of very little value to them and enormous value to you. So take that feedback and do something with it. And if it's negative feedback, track it down, work out why that negative perception has formed. Is it something that went wrong? Is it a process failure? Is it a customer perception issue? Is it genuinely that the customer just likes to moan? You have to consider that those people do exist. I used to work in retail, so I used to know quite a lot of those people. And but understand it and understand the course. And is there something you can do that will improve that? And it may be very simple. It may be more relationship driven, in which maybe do I need to just spend more time talking to this customer and explaining our services? Do I need to fix something about, has this person actually very kindly pointed out a flaw in my process that I can fix and improve it for everyone, and so on and so on. So how do you allocate those tasks? How do you decide who needs to do the fixing? And then how do you track whether the fixing has been done or not? That's kind of, as I say, it comes out of a few conversations that I've had with customers that are thinking along these lines. We're thinking along these lines ourselves. There are surveys and what have you, and there are various ways of doing it. What we're looking at here, because those that have seen these webinars before will know that we love a bit of Office 365. So that's what we're looking at here. I would say the methodology that we're going to talk about in here is pretty transferable. You could do this using probably the SharePoint part might be a bit difficult without Microsoft, but you could probably do it with a spreadsheet or something, but the methodology is one thing, and then there's the technology layer underneath that. But it's about the business outcomes more than the technology, I'd say. I'm hoping you're going to jump in with another question now. If not, I'll crack on to the demo part.
No, I think crack on.
Crack on, okay.
Go on, let's have a look at how we do.
We didn't mention, by the way, that the Q&A part is open. So if people have questions about any of the stuff or comments, do please put that in the Q&A box, which I always used to say is up at the top, but I think in fact is over to the side somewhere. So yeah,
it's the right hand side.
To the right hand side. Thank you very much. So yeah, do keep if you've got questions, let me know. Goodness me, this is extremely small. Right, there we are. So Office 365, this is our kind of demo or dummy. I don't know what demi is. Demo or dummy tenant. It's a fictional business that does, as you can see, all sorts of different things. And within there, Teams has not yet loaded, so just give that another push. But we're using SharePoint, and we're using Forms, and we're also actually going to be using Power Automate, so I'll open that up as well. Those that are not familiar, Forms, there are a few of this kind of product around in the market. It's a really sort of intuitive, configurable approach to building web forms, which seems to be taking its time to load. And we're using all the bandwidth doing the webinar. I hope not, the amount I pay for my bandwidth. So what we've done here is just built a very quick, simple form. Forms is a really, as I say, an intuitive tool to use. It's very, very quick. You can at any point just very quickly jump in and add new, and it's going to ask you what sort of questions. It'll even give you suggestions as to what sort of questions you might ask, and the top one it will always give is overall, how satisfied are you? You can have all sorts of different types, but you can see it's very, very quick and simple to put in a question. So if we wanted to say, perhaps down here we wanted to say, actually we'd like a phone number as well. You can see from there I can just go add new, and then just a text box.
So a few months back I was using Forms. I love Forms, by the way. I worked out you can do branching for the first time. I got very excited when I did that. Very geeky for a moment, just doing branching. It's sad. That's the height of my life at the moment.
Well, and it's funny you should say that, because there's some branching in this form. So you see it's really easy there. I've just popped in a heading. You can use the subtitle. You don't have to, as you can see there's no subtitle on this one, but if you want to use a subtitle to explain the question, why are we gathering this information, you should. It's good practice to put on these forms as well it's going to be a choice button, isn't it? A consent us using your contact information. You should always have that as an option, and you should have a way of recording it. That's always good practice to do if you're going to be gathering information like this. The stuff at the top, I hear people say, oh, you've always got to get consent to process any information that anyone gives you. This is not true. So the stuff at the top, 1, 2, 3 here, how likely are you to recommend us? Is there any feedback you'd like to share? And would you like a response for your feedback? You don't need consent for that. It's only if you get into things like name, email address, phone number, because you're then storing personally identifying information. As we were saying, we've got this little icon here, tells us that there's branching in here. And the specific branching is, would you like a response to your feedback? Yes, no. So if we say yes, and I'll show you this in a second, if we say yes, then we have these fields. And if we say no, then we don't bother and we skip to the end. And I can quickly preview that there. So this is the standard NPS, Net Promoter Score methodology for gathering customer feedback. So 0 is, and this is the standard wording that is used as well. So 0 is, when we're never going to recommend you a tool. You'd be really upset if you got a 0, I think. 10 is extremely likely, and it breaks down into what they call detractors, which is 0 to 6, people that are kind of actively bad for your reputation. Neutrals, 7 and 8, who are people who are doing nothing either way, and then 9 and 10 are your promoters. So it's designed to, you want people over on, obviously, on the right hand side. So let's say that we've got a neutral person, and we're going to say 8. And hopefully they're going to give you a bit of
I guess it's worth noting as well, Nick, that this is great. Like Forms is just great anyway to do internal stuff too.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I think externally, a lot of people think that they probably have to pay for some sort of subscription or sign up to something like Trustpilot, which might not actually necessarily be right for their business, you know, they don't necessarily need to highlight their reviews on their website or on Google, but they may want to gain specific customer feedback, and it's a great way to do that.
Yeah, agreed. So internally, it's very commonly used for internal surveys. We had one in the summer, which was to do with whether people prefer chocolate, beer, wine, or cider. I seem to recall, due to the generosity of our leadership. And if you do it internally, it's going to capture much richer information, because the person who signs on is one of your colleagues. They're already in your business. You're going to know a lot more. When you send it out externally, by default, it's going to be anonymous, and that's why I put the extra fields. You need to tell us your name. If you want us to contact you, you got to actively tell us your information, because externally it doesn't know. It's just a public website in that sense. But yes, you're right, Tess. It is all part of the license. You don't need to pay extra for this. Sorry.
And also, if you're using it externally, it doesn't have to look like this. You can brand it up a bit more, put your colours on it.
Cool.
I mean, that's marketing for you. That's what we're here for, to make it look pretty and look on like it's ours and part of the company. But yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. I seem to have turned into a space alien again, which is exciting. Yeah, and actually, I'm going to come on to the branding part in a second. So thanks for the segue. I like it. So the branching part. So if I say no, you'll see it's just going to give me to the submit section. But if I change that to yes, then it pops out the other questions for me to fill in that information. I'm not going to do that. No, actually, I will do that on this occasion. Do you know what? I think I will. Only because I've just remembered that it's relevant to later in the discussion. Oh no, I don't want you to use my phone, and I consent to using the information. Now, if I hit submit here, that's going to take me, and note this text. Thank you for taking time to give us feedback. So you see, this is relevant text. This isn't completely standard. I don't know what's going on with my video feed. I apologise for that. But yeah, so it's relevant text, which we can configure. And from here, if you wanted, people can actually go back and submit another one. I'm not sure why you would in this use case. If I go back into the designer view, to your point, Jig, about branding, yes, so you can go to the theme. It'll give you all sorts of theme ideas, which are a bit,
yeah.
What would you call it? They're a bit stock photography kind of theme ideas, but they give you a sense of what is possible, at least, before you then go into looking at down here. There's a nice plus button, customize the theme, and then you can say, okay, well, we probably want. I know. Oh no! Don't actually enter the hash. Every time I do this, that is not. Oh no, it's not. It's because I didn't lead the leading E. There we go.
I'm glad you know that off by heart, Nick.
I do. Yes. Select Technology Orange. If you'd like some real showing off, we can do it in Select Technology Purple as well.
That's better.
And you can add background images and so on, and you'll see that it's fairly limited. It just says give me one color, and then it works out all the shades for you on the way through. But yes, so you can do that. The other thing that I just want to point out with forms that I think is really nice, this here, customize the thank you message. So, and that's where I put in that text that you saw there. So you, by default, it'll just say thank you for your response, I think, but you can customize that. You can set start date and end date on it as well if you want. There's a shuffle questions. There are some where there is there's a benefit where you don't want an order of questions to but obviously that doesn't really apply here. It's important. This is important though. This is one thing that I will draw out. If you're going to send your form externally, you've got to change it to anyone with the link can respond. Otherwise, you send the link out and it will say, well, you're not a part of such and such business, therefore you can't fill this in. By default, it will be here. It will be only people in my organisation can respond by default. So you need to make sure that you've ticked that or it won't work and you'll look silly. And unfortunately, I have seen that happen. In fact, I've seen it happen this week. You've got some options down the bottom. Send email to recipients. Send email receipt to recipients. Can't do that because it's external. It doesn't know the email address. And unfortunately, even where you've got a box here that says email address, it's not quite clever enough yet to say, okay, send email to respondents. Which box should I use, kind of thing. And so you can't do that for external ones. And the get email notification, if I wanted to be told every time somebody had submitted this, then I could put a tick in there and I'll get an email in my Outlook inbox. Now, normally I might want that, but we're going to be a bit cleverer today. And the responses, you can see there are 5 responses. Those responses are being processed by Power Automate, which is for some reason hopefully not loading. There it is. But you do get a certain amount of information straight off the top. So you can see here in the responses section, it actually gives you, and it converts that into promoters, passes and detractors as well, because it knew that that was an NPS question. I'll show you how to do that in a second. It gives you the kind of the recent feedback, and it gives you some nice little charts of, you know, who wants out, who. You know, I mean, that's not an enormously helpful chart, to be brutally honest. But you know, if you had, you know, it will just automatically generate these charts for you. So that's what you get by default. Now, what we've done here that is a bit more takes it a step further, to put it that way, is hooks it together with SharePoint and with Planner, which I haven't loaded yet. So SharePoint and Planner and Teams, so that it becomes a bit more usable and uses a bit more automation. Now you have to wait while the circles go round in my tabs. It is normally a lot quicker than this, but there's a lot of video processing happening on my PC at the moment, so apologies for that.
Is it quite straightforward to find where this would be in your Teams and SharePoint, or do you sort of designate where you would be able to access it?
Yeah, you set that as you build this. I mean, this took me, what we're looking at here, probably took about 2 to 3 hours to configure, all told, with all of the automation and everything. Probably worth acknowledging I do this kind of day in, day out. It might take a bit longer for somebody coming at it fresh, but it's not enormously complicated. I created a SharePoint site and then created this list within there. So and basically have created, you can see, columns that roughly respond to the correspond rather to the fields in the survey. But yeah, you're going to create this on the fly. It's not a default thing. So what's happened is it's come in. You can see there that row there is the row that I've just submitted. So it came in from me, and it there's that text that I deliberately put in a particular way so I could find it easily. Do I require a response? Yes, and I've got the email address and I've got the score. So I can see there. Now I can do things in here if I wanted to make it a bit easier. So for example, I could say I want to group by the score. Well, what that will do is it will just make it easier to find the high scores and the low scores. So there's all the low scores. That's the ones that I need to worry about. These are the ones that I probably want to go and put on my LinkedIn, and also not worry about, but respond to. Don't forget. You can see there if no response was given, you can see it comes back and says no, it's anonymous. Don't know who it was. Now that has all been pushed in by Power Automate. I'm not going to go too much into the details of how that Power Automate works. But essentially what it's done is it's gathered the information out of the form and then arranged it and written it into here. The other thing that it has done There's always every webinar. There's always a bit that breaks. That's fine. If it didn't break on a webinar, I wouldn't trust it.
Yeah.
Famously, while this is loading, there was a demo back in the late 90s where Bill Gates came out to demonstrate USB 1, and he had one of those huge, great kind of jumbotron screens across the whole of the back of the stage, you know, like they do at these tech launches. And he came out with his machine, and he said, right, I'm going to plug this USB in, and the whole back wall, and he plugged in the USB, and it blue screened to death. Whole back wall of the screen.
No.
So you know, if it can happen to Bill Gates, it can happen to me. So what it's also done, if I go to here, you can see there, it's actually put a notification into Teams to tell me. So as well as write it into SharePoint, there's a Teams group here for customer feedback, which gets notifications. Now I could then start to pick this up and say, actually, maybe I want somebody else. So I'm, for the purposes of this, I'm Richard Thompson. I might say, you know, I think you can find a match. Come on. Think about it. Her name's Vanessa Wilton, and she is there. This is, as I say, because I'm using so much video power to. Okay. Well, there we go. No, I'll do it to Marion instead. Ah, I know why that is. That is my fault. That isn't to do with video processing. That is because you can only tag people who are members of a team, and Vanessa is not a member of this team. That's why that was happening. But you get the idea. You can come in here and you can start having a conversation about that specific piece of feedback. This includes this view button, which will bring me back to the record that's just been written into SharePoint. So on the business side, once I've set this up, I can send the form out and kind of not really have to think about it again, because I will be told in Teams, hey, somebody's just responded. You know, you don't have to keep going back checking. Have I had a response? Have I had a response? You know, it's going to tell you nicely through Teams, and it's even going to bring you a kind of the core information around it. So having got all of that in place, what you've now got is that you're starting to build a trend. You can obviously date all this stuff, so you could use this information to record and chart your progress over time. Is that okay? All the ones I got in October, they averaged out at 7.2. All the ones I got in November, they averaged at 7.9, and so on. Hopefully that's the direction of travel that you'd be going in. If you're going the other way, you need an action plan, but you can't form that. Even that's useful, because you can't form that action plan if you don't know that you're going the other way. However, you then need to actually have a way of managing what's going on. So I've also got a plan. I don't know if you're familiar with Planner. Well, I know that you two are familiar with Planner, but in fact, you rather love Planner, don't you, Tess? You're a bit of a Planner enthusiast.
Planner. Yes.
Good. So what we have here is, you might have noticed there's an action owner. So if I say that I'm going to get Mariam Todd to be the action owner on this, and I press save, fingers crossed, all being well, shortly this planner will update with an extra action for Mariam to start looking into this piece of feedback.
And then, of course, she'll be updated via email because Planner's been updated.
Yes, well, as soon as that task is created, Planner will send Mariam the email to confirm that item has been created for her. I'm just going to have a quick look in Power Automate. We have to remember with Power Automate, by the way, is it doesn't run when you press the button. It runs kind of every minute or two and checks, is there a button been pressed that I need to worry about? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you do sometimes get a little bit of a lag, but you can see here this assigned task from customer feedback. And actually, if you've got a lag and you want to check, you can go into it and it will tell you it's running. There you go. It's still having to think about that one. It is quite a complex task, that one. So what that's going to do is it's going to create a task in Planner, and it's going to assign it to Mariam. And as you say, Jig, Mariam's then going to get an email informing her you've got a task, you've got something to do. That could be redirected back into Teams as well, if you wanted to go that way. And this, when my mouse is feeling responsive, is what gets created by that automation. So it's been created. This one has actually not been assigned, but it's created. Oh no, it has been assigned. It was just a delay. There you go. There's the new task just been created there. So it creates it. It gives it a time. It actually works out. So what's 2 days from now? At the moment, it only works out what is 2 days. You could, if you wanted to, do something a bit cleverer where you work out 2 working days. So if it's Friday, then 2 days from now is Tuesday, not Sunday. Essentially, that's doable. I just haven't done it on this occasion, to be fair. And it's gathered the kind of the key bits of information out of that feedback as well, and put it in here just so that so that the assignee knows, gets just the highlight, and also down here the feedback link again, as it did in Teams, to link people back to the original record. Feedback received, and there's the record. So what we're doing here is pushing the information around and making it really easy. Now, it's really tempting, especially because I'm a techie kind of guy, to dig into the technical. Oh, it's exciting. How's it all work? The business outcomes here are. Sorry.
That's what's important to
everyone else. Exactly. It is what's important. Absolutely, is what's important. So the business outcomes are. It's easy for your customer to provide you feedback. It's easy for you to ask your customer for feedback, and with a bit of configuration and a bit of extra development in Office, it's fairly easy for you to create a way to store that data so that you can analyze it later, and use it for, as I say, for trending and understanding the direction of travel in your business. You don't need to be sitting there checking it every day, because it'll tell you if something's changed. And if you want to assign tasks, it's super easy to do that. All you've got to do is in the list say this is who I want the task assigned to, and the automation will go away and do that for you as well. I'm going to hold my hand up. There was another piece. Sorry, miss. There was a piece that I set myself in the homework, which is to also capture when this gets closed. And I think if
somebody completes does their task in Planner.
Yeah, so when somebody does their task in Planner, that it goes back to the SharePoint list and updates. That you might remember there was a field action status, right? Open and resolved. So
then it's always stored that has been dealt with.
Yeah,
has been seen. Or
I couldn't quite work out how to do that. You can do automation based on when somebody closes a task. What I couldn't work out was how to get back to the SharePoint list to tell it this record is the one that I want closed. But I'm sure it could be done. I just didn't quite have time to do it. But yeah, so your business outcomes, really easy to ask your customer for feedback, really easy for the customer to provide that feedback. Usable, growing data set that you can then use. Information is power. Data is obviously the basis of information. It's not the same thing as information. Data, information, knowledge, and wisdom, all different things.
Could we automate the reporting part of it as well? So, yes, you were saying about October being 7.2, November being 7.9. I mean, as a director, you're probably wanting to go in and just go, right, how are we doing this month? And just to visualize it. Is there a way to visually report that?
So you're getting into Power BI there.
Oh.
So yes, you can. So with Power BI, which is a whole other workshop in itself, right, or webinar in itself. But well, you can then come in and read that data. You can build the charts. You can build the tables and present that as a dashboard. And then your company director can come along to that whenever they like and just go, what's the state of it now? You know, we have a few of those. If anybody's been in our office, you'll see dashboards around on the screens telling you how many tickets are open and how many projects are running and all that sort of stuff. But you can also, to the case that you were describing there, you can then use that, basically export those dashboards to PDF and email them to the recipients, whoever you wanted to email it to, on a kind of, I mean, commonly sort of 4 o'clock in the morning of the first of every month, send out the report with all the data from the previous month. Is quite a common scenario. Yeah.
It just gives, keep you abreast of what's going on with customer feedback and whether it's improving or not, and then it gives you a focus.
Yeah, and there is a mobile app as well, don't forget, for actually for all of this. All of this can be done mobile. So you can, those reports, your company director, I mean, all of us habitually, I'm saying all of us, I'm making some assumptions about the way you guys live your lives. I am looking at Outlook on my phone before I've got out of bed most days, right?
Yeah, I definitely don't do that.
Okay. Before I get out of bed of a morning, I've checked Outlook basically to remind myself what my day looks like a lot of the time. How long have I got between now and when I've actually got to be dressed and presentable? You know, and what have I got on during the day? That's kind of before I'm even out of bed. Your company director types, they could have the Power BI app on their phone, and they could do that on the first day of the month. Pick up the phone, look at Power BI. Oh, great. Lovely, or oh my god, or whatever the response might be. I don't want to preempt that, but you know, yes, you can present this so that it's really easy to access. You don't even have to get out of your pajamas.
Just sit in bed looking at Power BI. And
you could, yeah, like a sort of Roman emperor, just sitting in bed running things. You know,
some people probably do that at the moment. Work from home in bed, potentially.
Yeah,
you could. Anyway, should we move on? So there's a couple of questions that I've just seen that have come in. One is, if you have multiple forms out, can you arrange for them to go into different groups within Teams once the form is completed, submitted? Right, let me just pass that sentence. Right, so what I think the question is, if I've got form A and form B, can I have those responses go to different places in Teams? And assuming that that is the question, the answer is yes. When we do the automation, it will ask for, there you go, process new feedback response. So if I hit edit on that, you'll see that actually the first thing it does is it says, which form is it? So when a new response is submitted, sorry about the slight time lag. There you go. So it's asking which form is it. So if you created 2 different forms, this piece of automation here will only run on that form being submitted. So if you wanted to do that, yes, you can do it, but you'd have to have 2 bits of automation. Right? You can't say when a response is submitted and then go, if it's this form, then do that. And if it's that form, do that. You have to have one rule for this form and then another completely separate rule for that form.
Is it relatively easy to duplicate that automation?
It's
copy it and then edit it as you go along.
It's not as easy as you might like, I have to say, but you can do a save as. So you just do save as. The reason, and basically copy that and then jiggle that one around to get what you want. The reason I say it's not as easy as you might like is because the forms will have different fields in them. So
you need to make sure the mapping is correct.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Your mapping is so, because if they haven't got different fields, why have you got different forms? So they must presumably have different questions in them. So if you select a different form here, the information that's used, the further down that path you go, the less likely it is to be accurate. So you will have to do some redesign work. But yes, it's very, very possible. And as I say, all of this that we've looked at here took me probably about 2 hours, to something like that, to put together.
It might take someone normal like me a day or something.
Okay, I understand what you mean by that. Yes, yeah, maybe a day.
Someone not so digitally savvy. The nicer way of putting it.
It's all right. It's one of the politest ways I've ever been called weird. That's fine. And then there was another question. What is Power Automate in a nutshell? Goodness. Power Automate is essentially a way of plugging different pieces of cloud software, and you can do on-premise as well, but let's say cloud software for now, plugging them together and putting rules in between. So you basically say, when this happens over here, get that information, do stuff with it, put it there. That's essentially what Power Automate does. Or it can trigger, so when somebody submits that form, send one of these into Teams. And there's lots and lots of connectors. I'm just going to dig into this slightly because Emily has asked the question. And hello, Emily. Nice to see you. Hope you're well. I know who that is. I think. Otherwise, there's somebody called Emily going, what the hell's going on? There's all sorts of connectors, and you can see. I mean, it's struggling to load the images, but you get the idea of how many there are. There's loads and loads and loads and loads.
So you could link it to like your LinkedIn or Facebook then.
Yeah, not LinkedIn, because LinkedIn doesn't allow automated interaction.
Oh, okay, but I've just seen Facebook. So would that
Facebook, Twitter?
If you got feedback on your Facebook page, could you then actually filter that through as well? So not just sending a form out. So if you already get reviews on your Facebook page or something, you can get them sort of directly linked to the Teams group or something like that?
Yes, probably. I'd have to think about the way through. One that has actually just occurred to me that would be nice is on this use case. So say somebody gave you a 10. You could have the process kind of generate an approval here that maybe would come to one of you guys that would say, this person's just given us a 10, and this is the text commentary they gave us. Do you want me to tweak that for you?
That's very cool.
And it's just a yes or no. And you can say, oh, no, they gave us a 10, but not sure I want that text. Or, oh, yeah, that's lovely text. Boom, just tweet it straight out. You know, you could build those kind of processes. You see, you got Instagram, Trello, Facebook, all sorts of exciting stuff. And it's obviously it's not just Microsoft on the Office side as well. So you've got things like Box, Asana, which is basically the same as Planner, Salesforce, which is the same as Dynamics. So they're not being precious about you have to be using Microsoft stuff to use Power Automate. However, if you haven't got an Office 365 license, you do have to pay £7 a month for the Power Automate. But yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. And there's a really good one called Encodian that will do all sorts of conversions and what have you. Yes, kind of run out of things to say about that, really. So we've got 10 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, do keep asking. There's Tess's cat. Lovely. Hello, Tess's cat. I think that's only fair because Henry, my dog, has made many contributions to the podcast. So it's only fair that your cat comes along.
Just need to get Bruno involved next.
Yes. So is there anything else that you think, Tess and Jig, that I need to explain here? Or have I done a super efficient job?
I think you've done a very good job. It's clear to me, and if it's clear to me, it means it should be clear to most people. I guess I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose you might not always be, I know you said it's really important to obviously get positive feedback, but you might not always need to react that quickly to it. But you would want to react quite quickly potentially to some negative feedback. So can you sort of separate the way you automate the information? So you might not necessarily get a notification to say, oh, you've got good feedback, but if it's below a certain number and comes with a comment or something, it will sort of notify you straight away with an email or a pop-up to your team.
Yeah, you can. So let's use the one here. What you can do is basically put in kind of if control blocks, they call them, is the term. But you're basically saying if it's this, do that. But if it's this, do that. Yeah. So just while that's loading, sorry.
Just thought if you're getting quite a high volume of feedback forms, you might not really want to know every time one's been filled in, but you need to know if it's something you would need to respond to fairly swiftly.
Yeah, and equally, use the use case that I just gave. You're never going to, know for a fact, you're never going to want to tweet the text that comes with a poor feedback, right? So
I hope not.
Nobody's ever going to say I've given you a 3 and then the text say everything about your service is fantastic, and if they do, there's probably a phone call that you need to have where you go, what? I don't understand. So yes, if you look here, this is what's called a condition block. So I could add in here, add a row where I'd say, okay, so if how likely, if that value is let's say less than or equal to 6, say, then do this path. But if it was not, so it was 7 or more, then it would go down this path. Yeah.
Okay.
And you can, and it doesn't have to be 2 as well. If you wanted to, you could say, this is what I want to do if it's 0, 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. This is what I want to do for 4, 5, and 6. This is what I want to do for 7 and 8. And this is what I want to do for 9 and 10. You can set up. Because I guess it's simple for the purposes of this, but you can do quite complicated dividing. Yeah.
Can you also do it so, if it's, say it was like me setting it up, and I'm quite happy to get the other, anything above like a 6 comes to me. Things that are sort of below the 6 or below a 3, for instance, would maybe go straight to a director.
Yeah, exactly that. So
or straight to like the customer services department, so they know they need to respond, or whatever the scenario might be. So you can actually set a specific person.
Yeah, exactly that. So
there's a lot more management you could do with forms.
There's different ways of doing that. So one, you could either build the whole path, or you can see here, I'm just going to remove that one because it will break things otherwise. You can see here that we split out for a bit. We've got but then come back to the main path. So what you could do is say, if it's, rather than kind of rebuild the whole thing multiple times, you'd say if it's 0, 1, 2, and 3, then the person I'm responding to is director. If it's 4, 5, and 6, then the person who's got the response is senior manager. If it's 7 and 8, no response, and if it's 9 and 10, then we're going to tell marketing. You know, that kind of thing. And you could just build that here, and then everything thereafter is going to be the same, but you're just going to get that value that you set here and use it later to determine which. So yes, it's possible, but we're getting a bit nerdy now. It's a good question. My response to it is a bit nerdy.
Oh, good to know that you can do it, though.
Yeah.
That's the important part, really.
Oh.
Cool.
So remind me, what's the next one of these? What are we talking about next time?
Oh.
That's it.
I'm gonna have to
Should
go
have
have a
prepared
look
for
now.
that.
Oh, my brain. It's not awake.
Mm.
It was invoice approvals.
Invoice approvals.
That's it.
Lovely, the approval engine. Love it. Yeah, so I think that again will be really useful for lots of businesses. That's a use case that I see a lot of people reliant on spreadsheets, emails. They used to see a lot of physically signing pieces of paper, but obviously the pandemic has pretty much done away with that. But yeah, so that one will be about how you can record your invoices and get approval for it from the right people at the right time in a low admin, easy way. Which I think is in 2 weeks' time, is it?
Yeah, it's 2 weeks' time, and then.
Sorry, cat again.
No, it's a bit longer than that. It's might be 2 weeks' time actually. 17th. I think it is 17th of December-ish.
17th of December, so it's nearly a month.
A nice Christmas festive special.
Exactly, and then.
Is it? Oh, okay.
And then the new year we've got one on inventory.
Oh yes, inventory management and lists and stuff.
That's it.
Yeah. So the point is this program of Automate for Success will be ongoing. Hopefully, people have enjoyed this.
Yeah.
I think it's been really.
It's always hard to tell, but yes, if this will be ongoing. I'm doing the marketing bit now. I'll hand back to you, Jig. I'll stop talking. You can do that bit.
Yes, and this will be ongoing. Yeah, actually, it's really good. I like the Power Automate. I like it, and I like the fact it uses forms and it takes control and forces us to do stuff with customer feedback. So many times you get feedback and you sit there with it and you do very little. This at least directs us and pushes us to do something with it, which is absolutely brilliant.
And so it doesn't take any more time.
Exactly. Bit of time now and then no more time later.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Nick. So yes, we are back in a few weeks' time with our invoice approvals webinar, and back in January for inventory. So please sign up onto those. They're on our website, select-technology.co.uk/events. I'd like to say just thank you very much. Thank you for watching. It's great to have you guys on, and we will see you next time. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.